Welcome to Oxford News This Week. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Terry Stiles. In this week's news, some Oxford Township residents may lose their water. And you may think the game of golf is safe, but wait till you see what happens to an Oxford resident.
Stay tuned. Learn more about these stories and others. The Oxford News begins right now. Oxford Township residents at the Lakeville of Manufactured Home Estates have a serious problem. The second of 4 water wells owned by the township, which provides water to Lakeville residents, has failed. And according to engineers, the remaining 2 wells could fail at any time, leaving those residents without any source of water. If that should happen, the township would have to haul water to those residents. The cost to repair and maintain these existing wells could run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The alternative is to run a 16-inch water line from the Willow Lake subdivision at an estimated installation expense of $1.7 million. To confirm a plan for the pipeline, the township board agreed to financing engineering plans to support the development.
Oxford Township has approved the sale of the Oxford Veterans Memorial Center on North Washington Street downtown. Buyer David Parker is willing to shell out $450,000 for the downtown icon, which includes the half-acre parking lot behind the 5,000-square-foot building. Originally, the township asking price was $600,000, and while some board members disagreed dropping the price so drastically, the approval was passed.
Contrary to the request of several residents at previous Planning Commission meetings, it's official. Oxford Township trustees approved the rezoning of 42-acre parcel located on the north side of Stanton Road and east of Baldwin Road. Zoning was changed by a 5-2 vote from F2 Suburban Farm, which requires at least 5 acres of land, to R2 Single Family Residential, which allows for 1-acre lots. Although many neighboring residents voiced numerous objections to the zoning, Oakland County actually gave their approval. With the approval, the White Pines Estate developer can proceed with their homes project.
The Oxford School District's refusal to provide information under the Freedom of Information Act to Team 20 catapulted the group to seek attorney assistance to pursue the FOIA. The group is asking for documents surrounding the resignation of former Chief of Administration Pam Anstey. Team 20 believes there is a memorandum citing the details about the cause of Anstey's untimely departure from her job. The requested correspondence was allegedly between past Superintendent Dr. William Skilling and Anstey, who cannot voice the cause for her departure due to a partial contractual agreement with the district.
It appears items from a recent rash of local thefts have turned up in the Oxford Lake subdivision. Officers were called to the residents in the subdivision after a resident found 2 wallets reported previously as stolen had been tossed into her yard. In addition, the woman reported her boyfriend's wallet had been recently stolen from his car also. Another reminder to clear your vehicle of all valuables, and 'tis the season for malicious mischief, don't you know?
And be very wary of suspicious phone calls as well. An Oxford man reported that he received a phone call informing him he won a major lottery prize. The catch was, before he could be sent the prize, he had to mail a certain amount of money to an address in Mount Clemens. He said the caller seemed so convincing he mailed the requested $3,000. And you guessed it, nothing became of the lottery win, and this gentleman is out a large chunk of cash. Police checked the address and it was empty. The incident does remain an open case.
You may remember a story that we did in May when a father left his adult son at a Pontiac hospital for mental health treatment, and the son went missing from the facility. While making a routine report of an auto hitting a deer, police discovered that the driver was the missing young man. The family has been notified and relieved that their son has been found.
One man's temper got the best of him during a Christian Golf League game and assaulted a fellow player. The altercation happened because the victim pointed out an infraction of the rules to the assailant. When the golfer insisted the rule breaker conform to the game, the leaguer bashed his peer in the head with a golf club. Police were told by the victim that he wanted to wait a day or so to consider filing assault charges. The case remains open.
A woman who hired a man to remodel a home on Golf Villa Drive in Oxford Township hired a fix-it man to do the job. The lady told officers, though, the man stole her personal owned tools from the job site. Officers went to the man's home, but he insisted he did not take the tools and agreed to a search, which proved her missing tools were not in his possession. Now, that's pretty rough to lose your tools, but
I'm telling you, and that's happened to both of my kids, and that's an expensive replacement. I don't know
is.
what's going on with everybody.
but there's some
stealing.
things going on with the government,
I'm
local government.
telling you, they are not listening to their own public. Officials are not listening. What's going on? I feel so bad for those people out on Stanton Road that are now going to be crowded. They filled up 2 planning commission meetings, angrily insisting, please don't do this to us. We bought out here 20 years ago. They're not listening. Orion Township did a great job of listening to their residents in January or so. They were going to have a one hauler system, garbage system, and they filled the room after the residents found out they wanted to pick their own garbage people. Odd jobs, by the way, and that will lead me to my next conversation. My own personal conversation here, or opinion here anyhow. So Orion decided they weren't going to go with one hauler. They listened to their residents, and even one township trustee said, you're here, we need to listen, you elected us. What's going on with this dictatorial thing that we've got going on in this community?
You
I
are
know it
right, and
sucks.
I've observed the same thing happening on the village level as
Yeah,
well.
speaking of odd jobs.
Yeah, and one thing that really I've noticed is that the attorneys are getting more and more involved in terms of the way these meetings are run.
Right.
And I guess I have a curious note here that village council members and those elected to those positions are put in those positions to make those decisions and not necessarily have their attorneys give
Make
them
them.
direction for them
On how to
in
make
advance.
them. Exactly.
And I see more and more, control of the meeting going to the attorneys. So,
Yeah, especially that last one. I'm working on a story on that. It was disturbing to me to watch that attorney drive his point across so emphatically to that board. If they can't make their own decision that they were elected to those seats to do by their peers, then they need to not maybe step down. They should not let an attorney insist on how they should think before they vote on something. I was really upset to see that, and that costs us a lot of money to have those attorneys there at each meeting.
yeah. Well, I grant you that, it's a concern, that the members on these councils and so forth, that people are going to sue for certain decisions that are made. But there are certain protections there that they have
Of
too,
course.
legally.
Yes, and they should
I
know
don't
that.
think every little item, should be controlled necessarily by attorney to give them directions. That's my own personal
Agreed.
opinion.
Mine
And
too.
It's just that I see that's the way that the
just
leadership is
frustrating.
going. And if the attorney is going to be the leader in this decision-making process, I don't think you need a council there. You don't need the representatives
One or the
that
other,
are voted
right.
in there.
Right.
Just hire the guy and put him in there.
People vote and put their trust in their decision makers for a reason. They think the decision makers have their best interest at heart. And I bet if you went out to those Stanton Road residents and asked them if that's how they felt, I would guess that they'd have a different answer right now. And I think that people should pay attention. Even nationally, the public scene or the political scene nationally right now is take back your government, take back your own communities, because politicians are making decisions and have agendas based on other needs, and they're not listening to their constituents. Anyhow, that's my personal opinion, not the opinion of OCTV or the news, ONTW.
And why don't you tell me how you really feel, Terry?
Tell me how you really feel. So I'm going to follow up on some of that. I'm not going to let that go because that's 2 incidences in 1 month in our community where people have showed up. People do speak, and I don't know that their concerns are really being heeded. So I'm going to keep an eye on that, Elgin.
Yep, and you know what, if you've got some input out there, why don't you send us a message?
Please do.
Yep.
At OCCTV.org. You can write us there. And that's it for news this week. If you'd like to learn more about these stories and others, stop by your local store and pick up a copy of the Oxford Leader newspaper, or better yet, catch us here at OCTV Charter Channel 191 and AT&T Channel 99. That's a mouthful, not easy for me to say.
It is. Coming up next, though, on OCTV, tune in for Oxford local sports, then catch Oxford School News with John Ochins. After that, join us with Auto Talk and Science in the News with Dave Kenny.
I'm Terry Stiles, and this is Oxford News This Week, where your news is closer to home.
And I'm Elgin Nichols. Remember, always be kind to your friends and neighbors, and thanks for watching.
OCTV.
Welcome to Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication New Scientist. In our first story last week, the mysterious X-37B plane was headed into space on its 4th trip, but now for the first time we have a clue about what's happening inside. The X-37B, built by Boeing, is a miniature uncrewed version of NASA's retired space shuttle. Its most recent mission ended in October after 674 days, and U.S. officials have remained tight-lipped about these space planes' exact purpose. Earlier this month, NASA revealed that on this trip, the plane will carry nearly 100 small samples of different materials, including polymers, coatings, and composites. The idea is to see how the materials fare when exposed to a space environment for more than 200 days, perhaps giving an indication of how long the X-37B's latest voyage will last, although it has previously flown missions lasting almost 2 years. In addition, the plane will test a new type of fuel-efficient thruster that relies on electrically charged propellant. The thruster could prove useful in the future for maneuvering satellites that need to make minor orbital corrections. Plans were for the plane to take off from Cape Canaveral Air Force Base or Air Station in Florida on May 20th. It's not clear when the plane will return, and previous missions have landed at the Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And back on Earth, take one look at a flying lemur, or colugo, sitting in a tree, and it brings to mind a scrawny kid forced to wear his big brother's hand-me-downs. Flaps of skin hang around its ankles and get in the way as it clambers awkwardly around the forest. Once the colugo leaps into the air, though, everything changes. Its baggy folds transform into enormous wings as the animal sails gracefully through the canopy. With their bark-patterned fur and nocturnal habits, spotting these animals, which are about the size of a large squirrel, is tough. Colugos spend their days curled up in cracks and crevices in the rainforest trees, only emerging to snack on young leaves at night. They are particular about which tree species they sleep in, and above all favor tall, isolated trees standing high above the canopy. Here they can hide from predators such as civets and pythons. If spotted, the lack of surrounding vegetation makes for a quick and easy getaway. It also gives them a nice launch pad for their dusk departure to feeding trees lower down in the canopy. Those animals are not technically flying, of course, but neither are they lemurs, although they are related. They belong to a family called Cynocephalidae. The Philippine and Malayan flying lemurs are the only 2 species in this very exclusive club. They lack the opposable thumbs of their primate cousins, which partly explains their ungainly frog-like climbing technique. But what they lack in ability on the branches, they more than make up for in the air. Colugos are the largest of the gliding mammals, and with an arm span of 70 meters, this makes for impressive wings. Stretching from fingertip to tail tip, they are as big as physically possible. Even their fingers are webbed to maximize the glider's surface area. This feat of natural engineering allows flying lemurs to glide over 130 meters while losing only 10 meters in height, on a par with flying squirrels and other gliding mammals. During the day, the flaps double up as a cozy shelter for baby colugos as they cling to their mother's belly. When it comes to landing, colugos have class. Since gliding is little more than falling with style, you might think it would end in a dramatic landing. Not a bit of it. Colugos can adjust their aerodynamics to slow themselves down significantly. Just before landing, they angle their body upwards to reduce speed, landing softly on all fours with pinpoint accuracy. Pretty good stuff. And fancy a vodka on the rocks? Well, this Arctic iceberg could be heading for a luxury drink near you. Floating off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada, this massive chunk of ice is big business. Iceberg hunters have found a way to cash in on this unlikely crop. catching the floating icebergs in large nets, hauling them aboard, and selling them onto upscale mineral water and vodka manufacturers. These companies want the ice for its Arctic purity. The water in these icebergs is around 12,000 years old and probably contains very few pollutants. For millennia, this water has lain trapped and preserved in the glaciers of Greenland, only recently breaking off in chunks and drifting southwards to Canada at speeds of only 0.7 kilometers an hour. Catching the ice and dragging it aboard is a rewarding but tricky task. In addition to the sheer difficulty of physically capturing and handling a massive ice strip, the iceberg hunters face increasing competition from each other as they fight to meet demand for a highly lucrative market. Well, that's it for this edition of Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.
I'm John Ochins, and welcome to the Oxford Wildcat School Update. It was school board meeting week again in Oxford. Last week's meeting was unusually tame compared to some of the more recent ones. The subject was the budget. The bottom line is that if you assume changes in state funding that aren't there yet, there could be a shortfall. Mike Dixon is a financial consultant. He mostly deals with school districts with big problems. Here he's filling in while we find a new assistant superintendent for business and finance. I visited with Mike after the board meeting and asked if we were on the verge of a financial black hole.
First of all, most of the work I do is with deficit elimination districts. Okay, deficit elimination planning with school districts. In other words, they are in what you might have referred to as the black hole. They're in deficit. All right, and that's not the case here. And you've got a trend of either consistent or growing enrollment. And so the only thing you've got to do, the district has to do in the next few years, is monitor that and make the adjustments accordingly. All right. Now, state aid isn't coming in like it used to, although the economy is improving in the state, and the school aid fund should have some additional resources in it. If the governor quits raiding it, then I think things are going to level off here in a period of time. So are we headed into a black hole? I don't think so.
Mike reminds us that at the end of the day, a budget is an estimate.
So if you keep in mind that the budget is simply estimates, and then at some point in time it gets solidified at the end of the year. It's solidified every time the board adopts it, but you keep revising it. Otherwise you can freeze yourself. Then growth doesn't take place. You don't give yourself the opportunity to enhance the programs and services and delivery systems that the district might need to do or make changes toward because of either regulatory issue or non-regulatory. If it was regulated, you'd have to do it. But you just got to keep some flexibility in there, and you got to keep an open mind as you change, things hit you that you don't know about. You get a serious roof leak at the high school or whatever that happens to be.
Financial consultant Mike Dixon. More victories to report this week. The Michigan Industrial and Technology Education Society held their state auto tech competition last week. Teacher Dan Balsley describes the MITES competition.
The competition is set up kind of as an individual competition. So the students are competing against their own teammates as well as all the other schools. Each student is evaluated in their ability to either identify parts, reassemble parts, figure out problems in each of these areas.
Student Gordon Dinsler ended up third in the state.
We ended up with these plaques. This one is for the high school, and this one is for Gordon himself for his third place finish in the competition. So things went well for us.
Way to go, guys. And what about Oxford Business Professionals of America? Aidan Schreiber and the Oxford BPA Broadcast News team returned from nationals in Anaheim, California. Aidan, along with Harrison Lavins, Marie Martinez, and Alicia Kuligowski, took third in the nation. Aidan describes the experience.
Other people, we went down there and competed in different events, such as my event and my other group's event, news broadcasting. And then we also took Programming Open, which allowed us to see how we did at nationals.
Well, tell me, what did you guys have to do? How did they, what did you have to go through there to?
Well, with the news broadcasting, we had to create a 3-minute newscast of just different things happening around our school. Then we had to create a presentation and present in front of the judges within 8 minutes.
In the world of International Baccalaureate, the 5th grade exhibition is the culmination of the primary year program. Teacher Rita Flynn tells us what she's doing to help bring things together this year.
And what I'm doing is I'm helping coordinate and directing the students in this learning process. And exhibition is the culminating celebration of the primary years program. So it's really important for us to inform the community about this process.
Oxford Elementary School's 5th grade exhibition is coming up on June 2nd. That's the Oxford School Update for this week. Stay tuned for Dave Kenny and Elgin Nichols. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
We're watching OCTV.
And welcome back to Oxford News this week. Oxford sports, of course. Oxford lost a hard-fought game, 8-3 in 9 innings of play. Of course, boys baseball, Mike Neff, the pitcher, took the loss in the game. Brendan Lewis threw 8 innings, only allowing 2 earned runs. The Wildcats had opportunities to score runs in the first, second, third, and 8th inning. Offensive leaders for the game: Drew Conley going 2 for 3, 2 walks and 2 stolen bases. Brendan Lewis 2 for 4. Thomas Clare 2 for 3. The Wildcats won the nightcap 3-1 with a shortened game due to darkness. I hate when that happens. Owen Wright continued to have a hot bat, going 1 for 3 with a sacrifice fly and a bunt while driving in the run. Drew Conley continued to steal bases, swiping his 20th base of the year. I guess it's okay to steal on it there, right? Dylan Grubb threw 5 innings, only giving up 1 hit, 1 earned run with a split of the day. The Wildcats record 10-19. The Wildcats take on Farmington Hills Harrison. That'll be a Friday night contest, 4:30 again. We'll have the results on next week's broadcast. Keeping it out on the diamond, the ladies softball team, after 5 lead changes in Monday's game, the Oxford High School and Oxford Wildcats varsity finally pulled out a 6-3 win over Troy Athens. The Oxford Wildcats varsity took the lead in the 6th inning, held on to the victory. The Oxford Wildcats varsity went up for good on an RBI single by Madison Dingus. Ellinger bringing home Caitlin Bean, Sky Donaldson, and got a hit each of her 2 times at bat. She tripled in the 1st inning and singled in the 3rd. Hannah Vachon struck out 13 hitters en route to the Oxford Wildcats varsity win. Vachon allowed 2 earned runs, 4 hits, 5 walks over 7 innings of play. Ellinger ended up on the wrong side of the pitching decision. Charged with the loss, she allowed 6 runs in 6 innings, walked 5, and struck out 8. Troy Athens jumped out to an early 1-0 lead in the top of the 1st. Troy Athens' threat began with a single by Busa, an error by Busa to get her to second, I should say. After a quick strike from Troy Athens, the Oxford Wildcats varsity responded with 3 runs in the 1st. The Oxford varsity scored on ground out by Logan Medell, an RBI single by Lauren Donaldson, and an RBI single by Madeline Morris. Game 2 of the contest, Lauren Donaldson had 2 extra base hits with the Oxford Wildcats. They still fell short in the 2nd game. Troy Athens beat them 8-7 in 7 innings of play. Sky Donaldson racked up 3 RBIs, 2 hits for the Oxford Wildcats. She tripled in the 5th and 7th inning. Troy Athens lined up, had no answer for Hannah Vachon. An RBI triple. Donaldson sparked the Oxford Wildcats varsity rally. Again, 2 runs in the top of the 7th helped the Oxford varsity close their deficit 8-7. And an RBI by Donaldson and a ground out by Madeline Morris fueled the Oxford Wildcats varsity comeback. Troy Athens closed the game out, and they picked up the win of the 2nd game. Wow, that was long, wasn't it? In sports, as you know, when they say it's not about the money, it's usually about the money. Mike Babcock never said it wasn't about the money. Good thing, though, because if you're talking about $50 million over 8 years for a hockey coach, well, I guess it's apparent it was about the money. Babcock will be on his way to Toronto. It's certainly a story and a time when, as I say, our coaching change has seen. It'll depend on who they'll probably look for next. In this case, it was time. Both Babcock is gone. There you have it in a nutshell. On a personal note, definitely want to say happy birthday to my sons, James Robert Hughes, 25, Blake Edward Hughes, 22. Take care of yourselves.
Welcome to this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication Automotive News. In our first story, Chevrolet is giving the sixth-generation Camaro a leaner design and a broader engine lineup as it tries to challenge the revitalized Ford Mustang for pony car sales supremacy. Chevrolet introduced the car May 16th at a trackside event that drew more than 1,000 Camaro fans at Belle Isle Park. The Camaro goes on sale in the fourth quarter in LT and SS trim levels. The 2016 Camaro Coupe retains the overall shape of the late 1960s era cars but loses some of the hard edges of today's design. Its slightly reduced size and broader use of aluminum make it more than 200 pounds lighter than the current car, which General Motors vows will result in more nimble, responsive handling. A 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo will serve as the base engine. Chevrolet will also offer a new 3.6-liter V6 and a 6.2-liter V8 that kicks out 455 horsepower and 455 pounds-feet of torque. The Camaro's wheelbase shrinks 1.6 inches versus the current car, and overall length is 2.3 inches shorter. GM says the 2-liter turbo will generate 275 horsepower and go from 0 to 60 in less than 6 seconds. It will also be the most fuel-efficient Camaro ever with an EPA rating of 30 miles per gallon on the highway, GM says. The new 3.6-liter will produce an estimated 335 horsepower and 284 pounds-feet of torque. Unlike the 3.6-liter on the current car, the new one will feature cylinder deactivation, which disables 2 cylinders under light loads to save fuel. It's the first time the feature has been offered on the Camaro. The 2-liter and 3.6-liter will come hooked to a 6-speed manual transmission or a new paddle shift 8-speed automatic. New technology on the 16 Camaro includes a drive mode selector which calibrates transmission shifts, electric power steering, and other controls for snow, ice, tour, sport, or track, but only on the SS models. The first use on SS models on GM's fast-responding magnetic ride control dampening system, and an interior spectrum lighting feature that illuminates the dash, door panels, and center console in 24 ambient effects. GM used aluminum instead of steel for the instrument panel frame, saving 9 pounds. Aluminum front suspension links and steel rear suspension links with lightning holes to reduce mass saved another 26 pounds from the current car. GM says the 2016 Camaro body is 28% stiffer. Engineers used a new multi-link McPherson strut front suspension with a double pivot design, which GM says allows for greater precision from the electric power steering. Can't wait to see them. And over in Japan, Akio Toyoda and Masamichi Kogai sounded more like doe-eyed lovebirds than CEOs 2 weeks ago when they unveiled a wide-ranging cooperation tie-up between Toyota Motor Corporation and Mazda Motor Corporation and everything from manufacturing and R&D to creating what they jointly called a whole new set of values for cars. For a pint-sized car maker such as Mazda, which sells just 1.4 million vehicles a year globally, fewer than Toyota builds in North America alone, teaming with a Titan carries a clear, concrete benefit. What was more striking was Toyota's acknowledgement that Mazda leads his company by a full lap in some areas. Those include Mazda's fuel-efficient Skyactiv engines, transmissions, and chassis systems, as well as its fetching Kodo design language. Toyota engineers say privately they have been quietly benchmarking Mazda, fascinated by its uncanny ability to churn out high-quality vehicles on a shoestring budget and do so profitably from high-cost Japan. Toyota, in turn, brings to the party expertise in many technologies Mazda doesn't have the budget for, such as hybrid drivetrains and hydrogen fuel cells. Last year, Mazda spent $906.1 million in R&D, roughly a tenth of Toyota's $8.36 billion outlay. Takata acknowledges defect in airbags. Once again, after months of pressure from U.S. regulators, Takata Motor Corporation acknowledged that its airbag inflators in nearly 34 million vehicles are defective, a decision that sharply expands the scope of the airbag crisis and could prompt one of the largest recalls for safety defect in U.S. history. Takata's acknowledgement marks a reversal from its long refusal to declare that its inflators are defective. Since 2008, when the first vehicles were recalled for Takata airbag inflators that could rupture in a crash and spray vehicle occupants with metal shards, the supplier has blamed the problem on a series of manufacturing and material handling errors at company plants that it says it had corrected over time. The expansion affects vehicles made by BMW, Chrysler, Daimler Trucks, Ford, General Motors, Honda, Mazda, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Subaru, and Toyota. Are there any left? Automakers are expected to detail the makes and models of vehicles affected in voluntary recalls to be filed in the coming days, U.S. officials said at a press conference on May 19th. The number of recalled vehicles could also change as new information becomes available, they said. Well, that's all for this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and as always, may the wind be at your back as you cruise down life's highways. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.